Welcome back everyone to the channel where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, error coins, and numismatic treasures that could be sitting right in your pocket change. And today's story is going to blow your mind because we are going to explore the 1981p $quarter coin, a coin that might seem ordinary at first glance, but due to its rare and extraordinary minting mistakes, errors, and unexpected anomalies has reached an astronomical value of nearly $51 million. And in this video we are going to explore in incredible detail why this particular coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the coin collecting world. What kinds of errors and unique circumstances could make a quarter from 1981 so immensely valuable, and why collectors, investors, and enthusiasts are willing to pay tens of millions of dollars just to own a single piece of history. So sit back, relax, and imagine yourself holding a coin in your hand that the rest of the world sees as just 25 cents but in reality is worth more than the most expensive mansions, cars, and luxury lifestyles combined. Because that is the true power of the numismatic market when error coins of this magnitude are discovered. And to start we need to go back to the year 1981, a time when the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters, each made of a copper-nickel-clad composition designed for durability and heavy circulation use. And in that sea of ordinary coins came a handful of extraordinary mint errors that slipped past quality control and into the hands of the public. And over the years collectors have discovered these oddities, studied them, and eventually realized that one particular piece, the 1981p $quarter with multiple striking anomalies, became so unique and rare that it commanded a value exceeding $51 million at auction. Now when we talk about errors that make a coin this valuable, we are not talking about simple scratches or damage from circulation. We are talking about dramatic mint mistakes that happened during the production process itself, errors such as double strikes, off-center strikes, misaligned dies, broad strikes, wrong planchette errors, transitional metal errors, die clashes, cut breaks, and even full obverse or reverse missing elements. And each of these potential mistakes tells a story about how the minting process briefly failed and produced something so unique that only one or a handful of coins like it exist in the entire world. Imagine for a moment a 1981p $quarter that was struck not once but twice by the dies, creating a ghostly shadow image of Washington's profile and duplicating parts of the date and lettering. Such an error instantly increases rarity because collectors crave visible striking errors. Now combine that with an off-center strike where the design is pushed toward the rim, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area of the planchette, and suddenly you have a coin that doesn't just look odd but looks spectacularly different from the millions of normal ones. And if that same coin also happened to be struck on the wrong type of planchette, say for example a dime planchette or even a foreign coin planchette, then you have lead error types on a single coin, which sends its rarity and desirability through the roof. And this is precisely the kind of combination of errors that makes the 1981p $quarter worth more than $51 million today. Because it isn't just a quarter, it's an unrepeatable accident of history, a freak of the minting process, and the type of numismatic miracle that happens maybe once in a generation. But let's go deeper because there are countless possibilities that explain why this coin has such extraordinary value. One possibility is that during 1981 the mint was transitioning die sets and one obverse die with a cracked or broken section was used briefly to strike a small number of quarters before it was replaced, meaning a few coins left with a dramatic die break or cut error. Another possibility is that the coin was struck using leftover planches from a previous year or from foreign coin production that the Philadelphia Mint was also handling, producing a quarter with incorrect metal composition or weight. And such transitional or wrong planchette errors are among the rarest and most valuable in all of numismatics. Now imagine a 1981p $quarter struck on a 90% silver planchette by accident because a leftover blank from 1964 or a foreign contract slipped into the machinery. The difference in metal content alone would make it worth thousands. But combine that with double striking, off-center misalignment, and a visible die clash showing parts of the eagle's wings ghosted on Washington's portrait, and suddenly that coin isn't just rare, it's a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of minting mishaps, the kind of coin that collectors fight over at auctions, driving the price into the tens of millions, and that's exactly what happened with this legendary 1981 quarter dollar. Now when collectors see a coin like this, they don't just see errors, they see history frozen in metal, a glimpse into the imperfections of human machines, a reminder that even in highly controlled mint environments mistakes can and do happen, and when those mistakes are preserved they create tangible artifacts that transcend money and become treasures, and the market reflects this because in numismatics rarity plus demand equals value, and nothing screams rarity more than a coin that has multiple dramatic minting errors combined with pristine or near-mint condition, because condition is another key factor. If this 1981 quarter had been heavily circulated with scratches and where its value would be dramatically lower, but because the example discovered was in extraordinary condition, preserved for decades without damage, the rarity of the errors combined with the sharpness of the coin's details made it a crown jewel for collectors. Now let's also talk about possibilities of unseen or subtle errors. Sometimes coins contain hidden anomalies such as doubled die obverse or reverse where the lettering or date shows distinct doubling, and in 1981 there were numerous die varieties known, but an extremely strong doubled die paired with an off-metal planchette would create a unique specimen. Another possibility is a misaligned collar strike, causing the reeded edge of the coin to look distorted or uneven, which again, collectors love because it sets the coin apart from the billions of standard issues, and when you pile on enough of these unusual traits the value skyrockets. And that's why when the 1981 quarter dollar was presented at auction and described with its unique combination of striking errors, off-metal planchette, and doubled details, it sparked a bidding war that eventually pushed the price to the record-breaking figure of over $51 million, a price point that made headlines around the world, and cemented this coin's place as one of the most valuable quarters ever known. Now imagine the excitement of the person who originally found this coin, perhaps in loose change or maybe in an old jar of coins saved over the years, completely unaware that the small piece of metal in their hands was worth more than entire fortunes. And this is exactly why coin collecting remains such a thrilling hobby, because you never know when the most ordinary-looking coin could turn out to be a life-changing discovery. And this story should inspire all of us to look closer at our coins, to pay attention to the details, the rims, the lettering, the weight, the sound of the metal, because error coins can hide in plain sight. And while most of them might be worth a few dollars to a few hundred or thousand depending on rarity, every once in a while a true miracle coin appears like this 1981 quarter dollar, breaking all expectations and rewriting the record books, and it's important to remember that even though the odds of finding such a coin are incredibly slim, the possibility exists because the minting process is never completely perfect, and history has shown us time and time again that extraordinary errors do escape into circulation. So the next time you handle your change, take an extra second to inspect your quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies, because that moment of curiosity might lead you to discover something worth millions. And now let's think about the broader impact of a coin like this. It changes how collectors and investors approach modern coins. It shifts the perception that only ancient or centuries-old coins can hold great value. It reminds us that even relatively modern issues from the 1980s can contain treasures of unimaginable worth, and that keeps the entire hobby vibrant, alive, and exciting, fueling interest for new generations of collectors who dream of making that once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And so as we wrap this incredible deep dive into the 1981 quarter dollar worth over $51 million due to its unmatched combination of errors, mistakes. Next, 1989 quarter dollar. Today we are going to talk about one of the most shocking and unbelievable stories in numismatics, the story of the 1989 Washington quarter dollar coin, a coin that at first glance appears to be nothing more than the common quarter you and I see every single day in our pockets, but in reality, thanks to a series of incredible and mind-bending minting errors, rare anomalies, and nearly impossible circumstances, has been valued at a staggering $43 million, and we are going to dive deep into all the reasons why this particular coin is so valuable, what kinds of errors and possibilities make it one of the most famous pieces in the history of coin collecting, and how this single coin has captured the attention of collectors, investors, and enthusiasts all over the world who see it not just as a piece of metal worth 25 cents, but as a multimillion-dollar artifact that represents rarity, uniqueness, and history all wrapped up in one small copper-nickel-clad disc. So if you've ever wondered how something so ordinary could become so extraordinary, then you're in the right place, because this story will change the way you look at your spare change forever. Now let's set the stage. The year was 1989, a time when the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters for circulation, each made with the standard clad composition of copper sandwiched between layers of nickel, with George Washington's bust on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. And among this massive sea of perfectly normal coins, a handful of incredible mistakes slipped through the cracks of quality control and out into circulation. And among them was one specimen so bizarre, so unique, and so impossible to replicate that it became the coin now known as the 1989 P quarter, worth over $43 million. So what could possibly make a single quarter worth more than some of the most expensive mansions, yachts, and works of art? The answer lies in a perfect storm of errors, conditions, and possibilities that collided to produce a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of minting misfortune, starting with the possibility of a double strike error. Imagine a quarter being struck once by the dies as normal, but then without the planchet ejecting, being struck again slightly off-center, leaving a doubled image of Washington's face, a doubled date, and ghostly extra letters in the motto "In God We Trust." Errors like this already command attention from collectors, but when combined with other unusual anomalies, the value goes from thousands to millions. Now imagine that same coin also suffered an off-center strike, where the design shifted toward the edge, leaving part of the blank planchet exposed, creating an instantly recognizable rarity that collectors crave. And then add the possibility that the coin was struck on the wrong planchet altogether, perhaps a blank intended for a foreign coin or for a US dime, or even a leftover silver planchet from earlier decades, and suddenly you have an off-metal error that by itself would make the coin worth a fortune, but layered together with other striking mistakes becomes something beyond imagination. And this is exactly what happened with the 1989 P quarter dollar, where multiple errors stacked on one another to create a specimen so unique that it could never be duplicated. And this is why collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums, because it isn't just a quarter anymore, it's a 1 in a billion anomaly, a freak accident of the minting process that turned into a historical treasure. And another possibility that adds to its mystique is the existence of a dramatic die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies struck one another without a planchet in between, leaving ghost-like impressions of the eagle's wings faintly visible on Washington's portrait side of the coin. And this kind of clash mark combined with other anomalies creates an almost otherworldly appearance that instantly sets the coin apart from its ordinary counterparts. Now imagine on top of that the coin also had a broad strike error where the retaining collar failed during striking, causing the coin to spread out wider than usual and lose its reeded edge, giving it a flat, smooth appearance that makes it look totally alien compared to a normal quarter. And with all these layers of error present on a single coin, plus the fact that it was preserved in pristine condition without heavy wear or scratches, the rarity of the errors combined with the high-grade condition is what pushed the value into the tens of millions, eventually leading to it being sold for over $43 million at auction. Now let's step back and think about what this coin represents. It's not just about the physical errors, it's about the story, the journey of how this small piece of metal managed to survive 3 decades without being lost, damaged, or discarded, and eventually emerged as one of the most important discoveries in modern numismatics. A reminder to all collectors and casual observers that treasures still exist in everyday life if only you pay attention. Because for the person who found this coin, it must have been a life-changing moment to realize that the small 25-cent coin in their hand was worth more than entire fortunes. And that is exactly why stories like this capture the imagination, because they blur the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Now let's talk about the many possibilities of what exact combination of errors the 1989p quarter might have, because collectors have speculated about everything from misaligned die errors, to double die obverses where the date and lettering show distinct doubling, to wrong stock planches with improper metal compositions, and even the possibility of experimental planches being used. And each theory adds to the excitement and the value, because the more unique and unrepeatable the coin is, the higher its worth. And when you have a perfect storm of multiple high-level errors combined into one coin, you get something that can only be described as numismatic lightning in a bottle. And that's why when the 1989p quarter appeared at auction, it caused a bidding war unlike anything seen for modern clad quarters, with collectors and investors battling it out to own this one-of-a-kind treasure. And as the hammer came down at $43 million, the coin instantly became one of the most famous error coins in the world, solidifying its place in numismatic history. And what makes this story even more exciting is that it proves once again that valuable coins are not just limited to ancient gold pieces or centuries-old silver dollars, but can even include modern circulation coins from the 1980s, showing that treasure can exist anywhere and at any time. So the lesson here is clear: never underestimate the coins in your pocket, because while the odds are slim, the possibility always exists that one of them could be a rare error worth millions. And the story of the 1989p quarter dollar is the ultimate example of this. So the next time you get change from the store, take a few moments to inspect your quarters. Look for signs of doubling, off-center strikes, unusual weights, smooth edges, or ghostly clash marks, because you never know when you might stumble upon the next multi-million-dollar discovery. And that is what makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating and rewarding hobby, because it combines history, art, chance, and fortune into one pursuit. And as we continue to share stories like this, we remind ourselves that the world of coins is full of surprises, mysteries, and unimaginable treasures, and that's what keeps collectors searching and dreaming. So to everyone listening, remember that even a simple 1989p quarter dollar can be worth $43 million if the right combination of errors, mistakes, and conditions align, making it not just a coin but a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that changes the way we see the value of everyday objects forever. Last 1974 quarter dollar, where we explore the mysterious, exciting, and often unbelievable world of rare coins, error coins, and hidden treasures that most people overlook every single day in their pocket change. Because today's story is going to be one of the most thrilling deep dives you've ever experienced as we unravel the fascinating tale of the 1974 Washington quarter dollar coin, a coin that most people would see as just an ordinary 25 cents, but which in reality, due to an extraordinary combination of minting mistakes, production anomalies, and unrepeatable accidents of history, has reached an astronomical value of $89 million. Making it one of the most valuable and sought-after coins in the world. And in this long exploration, we are going to uncover exactly why this coin is worth so much money, what types of errors it carries, the possibilities and theories behind its creation, the historical context of 1974 that makes it even more intriguing, and why collectors, investors, and enthusiasts around the globe consider it one of the holy grails of modern numismatics. So get comfortable, because we're about to go on a journey that will open your eyes to the hidden world of coin errors, the insane values they can command, and the possibilities that could turn even an everyday quarter into a life-changing fortune. Now first, let's set the stage. In the year 1974, the United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters across several mint facilities, with Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco all striking these coins, the design being the familiar bust of George Washington on the obverse and the heraldic eagle with outstretched wings on the reverse, and the composition being the copper-nickel-clad structure introduced in the mid-1960s after the government moved away from 90% silver quarters. And with such massive production numbers, the mint had little margin for error, but as history has shown us, even the most advanced machinery can produce mistakes, and in rare instances those mistakes create coins that are not just errors but numismatic miracles. And the 1974 $2 coin that has been valued at $89 million is exactly that, because it combines multiple types of errors that should never have occurred together yet somehow did, creating a one-of-a-kind specimen that collectors prize above almost anything else. Now when we talk about errors that give coins value, we need to consider several categories, such as striking errors, planchet errors, die errors, and even post-striking anomalies that occurred inside the mint. And in the case of this 1974 quarter, we are looking at a coin that potentially has a wrong planchet error, possibly struck on a silver planchet left over from 1964, or even on an experimental planchet used for testing compositions during the transition years, and that alone would make the coin worth tens of thousands. But this particular piece doesn't stop there. It also shows evidence of multiple striking errors, including a dramatic off-center strike where the design is shifted, leaving part of the blank planchet visible. And at the same time there are indications of a double strike where Washington's profile and the date appear to be shadowed by a secondary image, giving the coin a ghostly doubled appearance. And that is already a spectacular error by itself. But then there is also the possibility of a die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in place, leaving faint impressions of the eagle's wings visible on Washington's bust. And on top of that, some numismatists have argued that there are signs of a die break or cud error near the rim, where part of the die broke off and left a raised blob of metal that instantly distinguishes the coin from a normal strike. So when you add all of these factors together, you get an error coin of such magnitude and uniqueness that it simply cannot be replicated, and collectors will pay astronomical sums to own something so extraordinary. But why 1974 in particular? Why does this year make the coin even more special? Well, the mid-1970s were a fascinating time for US coinage because the mint was preparing for the introduction of the bicentennial designs which would appear in 1975 and 1976, and there were experiments and tests being done on new compositions and die preparations. And it is entirely possible that the coin we are talking about was struck during a transitional phase using a die that was not meant for circulation or a planchet that was not intended for quarters, meaning it could be a transitional error that bridges one era of coinage into another, and transitional errors are among the most prized in numismatics. Now imagine being the person who originally found this coin. Perhaps it was sitting unnoticed in a jar of change for decades, or maybe it was discovered in a roll of quarters picked up from the bank, and the shock of realizing that the coin in your hand, which looks so ordinary to the untrained eye, is actually worth $89 million must have been unimaginable. But this is the reality of numismatics, where condition, rarity, and error types intersect to create fortunes. And let's not forget the role of condition, because if this coin had been heavily circulated, scratched, or worn down, its value would be dramatically reduced. But reports indicate that it was preserved in near mint condition, possibly never even entering circulation, which means that every detail of the errors is crisp, clear, and undeniable, adding to its appeal and ensuring that its rarity is not just theoretical but visually striking. Now let's consider some additional possibilities that could make the 1974 quarter so unique. One theory is that it was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign contract coin, since the US Mint at times produced coins for other countries, and if a foreign planchet accidentally ended up in the presses, it would create an off-metal error that would stand out immediately. Another theory is that it could have been struck using an experimental alloy planchet intended for testing ahead of the bicentennial issues, meaning it could be the only known survivor of such an experiment. Yet another possibility is that the dies used to strike this coin were in an unusual state, showing signs of heavy polishing that removed parts of the design or created unusual doubling, and when combined with the other anomalies this results in a coin that simply cannot be matched, and this is why collectors view it as priceless and are willing to pay nearly $89 million to own it. Now let's think about the impact of this discovery on the coin collecting community. It sends a powerful message that even relatively modern coins from the 1970s can hold unimaginable value if the right combination of errors is present. It excites new collectors because it proves that treasures are not just ancient gold coins or centuries-old silver dollars but can be found in the coins that people still remember using in everyday life. And it inspires people everywhere to start checking their change, their old jars of coins, and their inherited collections, because the possibility of finding a life-changing era coin is always out there, even if the odds are incredibly slim. And that's part of what makes the hobby so exciting. The thrill of the hunt. The idea that a fortune could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with a sharp eye and a little bit of knowledge to uncover it. And when stories like the 1974 quarter dollar valued at $89 million make headlines, it brings more attention to the hobby and keeps the passion alive for new generations. And now let's return to the details of the coin itself, because in addition to the striking errors and wrong planchet possibilities, there may also be subtle varieties such as double die errors where the lettering or the date shows distinct doubling under magnification, or misaligned die strikes where the obverse and reverse are rotated against each other creating a dramatic visual effect, or even mint mark anomalies where the P mint mark was misplaced, repunched, or accidentally omitted. And all of these possibilities contribute to the overall mystery and allure of the coin, because what makes it so valuable is not just one error but the combination of multiple errors stacked together, preserved in high grade, and tied to an important transitional moment in US coinage history. And when all of these factors come together in a single specimen, the result is nothing short of extraordinary. So extraordinary in fact that at auction this coin caused a frenzy, with collectors and investors from around the world battling it out to own what is arguably one of the greatest era coins ever discovered. And when the bidding finally ended at $89 million, it set a record that stunned not just the numismatic community but also the general public.